The topic that I picked was bioaccumulation and biomagnification and its effects on microevolution through ecotoxicity. So the first thing is, why did I choose this topic? And I chose this topic because I took AP Environmental Science last year in my junior year. And we had an entire lesson on bioaccumulation and biomagnification. And I found that topic very interesting, and I wanted to learn beyond the material. So when I first had my mentor, Monica, she and I talked about the possible topics we could have. And I had a whole list that was based on bioaccumulation and biomagnification. And I wanted to learn more about the evolution of these aquatic species after bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So we first began our paper through finding what type of papers would relate to the topic. And then we started a draft. So we split our paper into 7 parts. The first was the abstract, and this is where we talked about defining biomagnification and bioaccumulation, and then ecotoxicity and microevolution. Sorry. I'm a bit sick. I'm still recovering from a cold, so I'm sorry if I cough in between. And then my dad's also coming in and checking in on me. So back to what I was saying. So this is where we defined bioaccumulation and biomagnification, ecotoxicity, and microevolution, just so we get a ground basic idea of what these terms are, since it might be new to someone who's reading the paper and they don't know what it is. So after that, we talked about introduction. Excuse me. This is where I introduce what pollution is and basically how it forms through pollutants. And many of these pollutants are heavy metals, mercury and lead, which are commonly found in these species. And then the next was our methods. So my mentor, she just told me to have a simple sentence of what I want to research on. And then she used this to find other papers on Google Scholar with the key terms of biomagnification, bioaccumulation, and ecotoxicity. And she found around 7 papers, and then I contributed 4 papers. And then the next topic is, excuse me, bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So this is where I had an in-depth definition of what those 2 terms are and giving examples of how it occurs. So then the first example is a research experiment conducted by John Gray, where it focused on flounders and showed the inorganic and organic mercury being accumulated in their kidneys and liver. And although it would later be excreted, over time and age, the mercury accumulated. And then the next topic was effects on ecotoxicity. This is where we defined the in-depth definition of ecotoxicity and included examples. For example, tilapia fishes, they were found to have a large accumulation of mercury in them. And naturally, they have something called superoxide dismutase. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it's basically called SOD. and it's an enzyme where it breaks down radicals of oxygen into hydrogen peroxide, and this is to help them to fight all these pollutants, so then that they avoid any diseases. And then eventually, over time, the mercury accumulated more and more into their systems, and then they had to form more of these SODs. And then the last was our conclusion, and this is where I talked about how we need more research and attention towards this topic, because when we think of bioaccumulation and biomagnification, we don't think about how it affects the evolution of these species, because evolution takes time, and the changes in these species are not that noticeable. So then I think this topic is something we need to talk about more in the future, especially with climate change, global warming, and all the pollution in the air that's going on, getting worse and worse over the excuse me, over the years. And we need more attention on how this is affecting species that we rely on, animals, and it's just a very important topic that I would love to get into in my future career. So then the second thing is working with my mentor. So her name is Monica Lasky, and she's a PhD student at Colorado State University. And honestly, my experience with her was very fun. She made me very comfortable. Usually, I'm not a very social person, especially when it comes to new people. But she was very open to me and my ideas. Unfortunately, halfway through our research paper, she had to go do field work in South Africa. So then the help was turned over to her husband, and he was very helpful as well. They had very similar personalities, so it was a great experience. Although her field of study doesn't relate to mine, since I want to study more in environmental science and its effects on public health, she studies ecology, and I believe she's an aspiring biology conservative. I can't say that word. She had a lot of stories about her field work and encountering these big animals like the Burmese python, and and it was very exciting. I was very surprised in her story. I think if you guys ever meet her, or I don't know, I don't know if it's my place to tell her stories, but if you ever meet her or anything like that, I think it's great to learn more about her experiences. But overall, her experiences and stories that she told me made me more excited about learning about environmental science and all these species and animals that contribute to our ecosystem. And I'm so grateful to have had her as my mentor. What did I learn from this experience? I learned more about bioaccumulation and biomagnification. In my environmental science class, we didn't learn much about it. We just briefly went over it. But with this research paper, I learned more in depth about what it is and its effects. I didn't even know that it could actually affect the evolution of animals. And then this paper really helped me open a new experience to that. And then what were some issues I had? My mentor, she helped me a lot. She made the process much easier since she knew it was my first time doing the paper. but I did have issues finishing it under a timely manner, especially since she's in Easter time and I'm at Pacific time. So then I didn't want to bother her too late at the night. And then another was understanding the content of the research papers, because mine was a review paper. So then I had to read other people's papers, and it was confusing because they were using these big words I didn't know, and I had to reread it multiple times. And I'm a person who gets distracted a lot when reading. So then I had to read it so many times. And then eventually I asked for help from Monica and her husband, Jake. They just gave me tips and advice on how they usually review papers. And then I just followed their method by looking at the paper key terms that I would use for my paper. So for example, if I needed an example in my paper on bioaccumulation or something like that, I'd look at the discussion and then look for important words that I could use. I mean, that would be similar to my examples. And then that made the process so much easier. But yeah, that overall, she and her husband, they helped me so much, and I'm so grateful to have them. It made this experience so much more fun and exciting. And then my ending remarks, overall, I am so thankful to have found Talaria. Especially during quarantine, I had no idea what to do over the summer, but thanks to Talaria, I had my first experience writing a research paper, and honestly, I want to do more papers in the future, especially in college. And I think this paper is something I want to expand on and do further research on in the future in college. So thank you so much to Talaria, and thank you for my mentors. Even though they're not here today, I'm so thankful to have them. I feel like the experience was so short. I wish I had more time with them. I think at this point, I don't know. I don't know if I could still reach out to them and do more on the paper, especially with the schedule I have with school. But overall, thank you so much to Talaria and my mentors. And thank you for the remaining people in the Zoom call for listening to my presentation. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, I'm open to them as well.